12 point Times New Roman APA format. And in this assignment, you have to keep these requirements in mind. Let's go over these requirements. For each resource, you must include the following. The first thing is bibliographic citation according to APA format. So you might recall that in the previous homework where you submitted 5 resources, some of you had just mentioned the link of each resource. And some other students had, put the information just in a random order. But for this assignment, you must follow APA format to write down the citation. Okay, so when you put the information of each resource according to APA format, we say that basically you wrote it according to bibliographic citation pattern. All right, so I'm sure most of you have done APA format in your 101 WRCM 101 course. You can very easily look up for the APA format online as well. You just Google it and you will learn how to write APA format for a resource. So for example, if it is a book whose citation you are writing, you will first write the author's name in reverse order, then you will have the year, then you will have the title of the resource, then you will have the publisher, right? Place of the publication, publisher, right? So you have to write each resource in APA format. That is the first requirement. The second requirement for annotated bibliography assignment is that for each resource you include a summary of that resource. Now, I'm sure you understand this will be, a little laborious, because mentioning the resource is one thing and writing its summary is another thing. So writing the summary means you will be supposed to read that resource as well. So you can also say that basically in this week you will have to do some reading. So if you include 10 resources and each resource has 10 pages, you are going to read about 100 pages. Now, the caution that you apply while listing your resources, one of the cautions is that do not choose random resources and do not choose the random resources of random length. So when you list a resource over here in annotated bibliography, make sure you know that the resource is relevant, is completely relevant. And number 2, the resource is manageable for you, that you can manage to read it in the given time frame. Now, you have to be wise enough to pick that resource. You know how much time you have to cover it and read it. So while you are writing your annotated bibliography, you might be reading it a little quicker. You will be doing what generally we call scanning the resource. You will be scanning the resource. That is, you will be reading it quickly. But when you start writing your paper, you will have to read the same resource very carefully. All right. So keep that in mind, that the resource that you list, you have to read it as well. So always see the resource before you put it in the list. If it is title of a book, check the book. What is the length of the book? Ask yourself, should you include the whole book? And will you be able to read the whole book? If not, then maybe you can just mention one chapter from the whole book. You can include that chapter which is really important for the paper. So you have to provide a summary
Sir,
of the.
how long should the summary be? How many
Yeah, there is
bytes?
no standard length for the
How many
summary,
words should we
but
write?
uh, so there is no length for the summary as such, fixed length, because that will vary depending upon the length of the resource. I mean, you might have a web page, you might have a research paper that you are dealing with, right? So maybe depending upon the length of the resource, say if it is a chapter, I mean, that is the most common case. You have a chapter or you have a research paper. That is what usually happens. And the length of a chapter or research paper is usually 20 pages. It is somewhere between 18 pages to 25 pages. So for this kind of piece, you should have a summary of 300 words for each resource. Okay, so 300 words would be roughly a page. It will be less than a page, a double space. Okay, uh, you might say this will be 2 paragraphs for each resource. Okay, so in other words, you will be writing like 20 paragraphs for the whole assignment. All right. Now, if the resource is shorter, right? If, for example, if the resource itself is a web page, and the length of the web page is equivalent to 2 to 3 pages, then maybe 50 words summary is enough. Okay, so that depends on the length of the resource, how lengthy your summary should be. So what I'm saying is that for 20 to 25 pages, lengthy article, 1 page summary will be enough, double space. All right. Now, for example, if you're including a newspaper article, newspaper articles are usually 2 pages maximum in length. Okay, so for that, for those 2 pages, a 50 word summary should be just fine. Okay. Also, you have to include explanation of why this resource is relevant to your research. And in that explanation, you include the origin of the source, that is where the source has been taken. Is it from a newspaper? Is it from a book? Is it from a website? The second thing that you should include is what makes it important to your research. Okay, so why that resource is important for your research? Mention that. Value. What information from the resource you will be using for your paper. And then limitation. Are there any weaknesses within that particular resource that you are aware of? If you are unable to notice any weakness in that resource, just leave this point. Okay, but you must keep these 3 points along with each resource. So you are writing a summary of the resource and then telling what is the origin of the source, where you took it, and why this resource is relevant for your research, and what particular information from the resource is useful for your research. All right. So this is annotated bibliography assignment. So overall in the assignment, you are giving 10 resources. By the way, the resources that you have already submitted, they might just be fine, but make sure all of them are relevant to your research topic and all of them are manageable for you. If you think that some of them are too lengthy, just drop them and replace them with the shorter versions of those resources. Okay. And then you have to provide a summary of each resource. Additionally, you have to tell the origin of the source, the purpose of the research, the purpose of that article for your research, and then value what particular information from the source could be useful for your paper. So once you write all these things for each resource, so you will write the title of the resource you will write the title of the resource according to APA, and under that you will provide all this information. Okay, so you will give the heading of summary, write the summary, and then origin, then purpose, then value. After that, move on to the second source, and then the third source, fourth source, fifth source, like this. Okay,